Here is your panel. If you would just like to introduce yourself and your role within the society or within Kent, please.
Hi everyone, my name is Aaron Thompson and I'm the Vice President Activities at Kent. So I oversee all societies or student media or volunteering groups as well. I'm here to empower students and make sure your student experience is as good as it can be.
Yeah. Hi everyone, my name is Omalade. I'm the BME, so the Black and Ethnic Minorities Officer for Black Space. And I'm a third-year Policy and International Relations student. So my role is to represent Black and ethnic minority students, but specifically to give a voice to Black students on campus.
Hi everyone, my name is Hama Todoku. I am the Vice President for Higher Education at the National Union of Students. So that means that there are 5 Vice Presidents underneath the President, and I look after all the universities in the UK. So that's across England, Wales, and Scotland, and in Northern Ireland.
Brilliant. I'm Dave Thomas. I'm the Central Development Officer for the University Student Success Project.
Hello everyone, my name's Wayne Campbell. I'm the Director of Student Services at the University. I'm also the University's Senior Master, which means that I'm responsible for all the college masters and also for careers and employability, student support, wellbeing, student equality, diversity and inclusivity, community liaison, as well as student conduct and complaints. Happy to be here.
Thank you very much.
And I mean that.
So, before we go, I'll actually introduce who I am. My name is Stephen Kamara, and I am the African Caribbean Society President at the University of Kent Canterbury. Lastly, before we do go on, I would just like to say, unfortunately, Shakira Martin, who is the NUS President, unfortunately couldn't be here today. So, going swiftly on. So, the first topic of this discussion is establishments are normally run by rich white men and women who don't understand the problems and issues surrounding the Black community. What are we doing to ensure there is Black representation and that other cultures are considered and accommodated for?
So from a Kent Union aspect, we obviously have Omalade. Her place is new this year. So it's the first time we've actually had a Black place in role. Obviously me, I'm your Vice President Activities. I'm the first Black officer in 10 years. So I'm hoping that me being in this role, it will inspire others to pursue that and to actually go for leadership roles. It's important that we do see people who are like us. As well as that, in terms of actually making sure that we have the representation aspect, we have a new role in the union. We have a campaigns and quality coordinator who looks at stuff at equality, diversity, and making sure that everything that we do in our training, in the way that we do things, our campaigns, that it does represent everyone, it is accessible to everyone as well. And last year, we started a BME Voices project. So we went out and we actually looked at what issues currently surround the Black community and what we can do about it. So that is an ongoing project that we currently look at aspects of the union and where we are at and what we're going to do in the future. So that is something that we're ongoing and currently doing.
Yeah, leading on from what Aaron said. So my role is quite new. I'm the BME Officer of Black Space, and I think one of the reasons I ran was due to the BME Student Voices project. So majority of my manifestos and things I want to achieve this year are based on the report. And what I've done so far is I've visited the Medway and the Canterbury campuses and spoken to most BME students. And it's clear there is a common consensus among students about the lack of representation. And I think this year it is changing. You do have me and Aaron within the union who are doing our best to speak to different societies, even societies that not many BME students are joining. We're trying to get more engagement and also speaking to other departments as well to tailor their advertising towards BME students to ensure that you are aware of the different departments and services that the university offers. So yeah.
So just looking at this from a sort of higher education perspective nationally, certainly in my own experience, and I have the privilege of being able to go and visit lots of institutions and speaking to lots of both student unions, but also speaking to lots of senior management at universities. And it's very noticeably very white, higher education in this country, both at university level, but both in terms of the sector, so all the key sector agencies, all the funding councils, most committees that I sit in are full of, they're all white. I tend to be the only Black person in the room. And what that means is that the people who are making the key decisions about higher education in this country, it is people who've had a specific journey through higher education. It's people who have a specific experience, and some of the things which might affect black and minority ethnic people in different ways won't be considered by these people just because they haven't got that experience. And they've all been, so if you look at your senior university leaders, your vice chancellors and maybe your pro-vice chancellor, they've all been to university, but they went to university at a different time. They went to university at a time when, it's great to see that more black and minority ethnic people are going to university than ever before, but back in the time when they went to university and had their own experience, that wasn't the case. So, and they're often using their experience to inform the work they do. And for me, the key is looking at the pipeline for that leadership. So how is it that those people ended up in those leadership positions? Well, it's partly because when they were a student, they excelled at their studies. They then went on to do master's courses. They then went on to their PhD. They then excelled in their fields of research. They then took up leadership positions within the university and then took up university leadership. Now, we know that there are more black and minority ethnic people going into university. We're not so sure that they're progressing, and they're certainly not getting a good attainment. The university aren't giving them good enough attainment. They're not progressing into master studies in the same way, and they're certainly not being promoted as much as we would like to see nationally throughout the picture. So I think, just to take a perspective on this, which is about university leadership across the country nationally, we've got to be doing more to look at the progression, look at the pipeline, and making sure that we are targeting and ensuring that we are supporting black students and black and minority ethnic students to make sure that they become academics, to make sure that they can make their way through the university leadership. Then hopefully we'll get to a point in the long term where their lived experience can ensure that the university space is as inclusive as it can be for everyone.
Thank you very much. Well, so I'll approach my answer. I'll frame it in a social justice perspective. And I deliberately jotted something down on paper just to constrain my thoughts. So here goes. So educational institutions in particular, it is claimed, play a fundamental role in reproducing white privilege, and universities are seen as places where racism and stereotypes against ethnic and minority groups take place through a variety of means. The curriculum and pedagogy have been analyzed as sites for this kind of reproduction that takes place through misrepresentation of history and othering of minority students, shaping both the white and the non-white subjective identities. So a more pressing issue for me is that of institutional and sectoral cultures that promote skewed differentials regarding student experience, retention, attainment, success, and progression for minority ethnic students. This with a lack of appreciation for the wider sociocultural context. So according to Professor Robbie Shilliam, who we had the privilege to host last October, modern liberal education wishes to suture and save public culture that is racially exclusionary and complicit in committing epistemic injustice. Such injustice refers to the ways in which some racialized groups are deemed competent to cultivate the public sphere, while others are deemed incompetent to do so. So for me, what is clear is that there's a far more pressing challenge to ensure that universities fulfill the aims, objectives, and social ends of higher education. And in saying that, what I mean is that they need to fulfill their corporate social responsibility. This, chief among this, is to uphold fair operating practices, upholding human rights, equally promoting social justice and addressing student issues such as challenges to a sense of belonging for all students. Additionally, micro-inequalities and microaggressions, and improving graduate employment opportunities. So the fundamental question, it still exists for me. What are we doing to motivate universities to uphold their corporate social responsibilities? And I'll throw that question back to you. What are we doing to ensure that universities live up to their responsibilities?
Are you waiting for an answer?
Oh, I think he has an answer. Yeah.
Maybe we could start. I know one thing that we could say universities are doing. I mean, we're talking about academic stuff, more one of the ways that universities can help is that academic staffs, such as lecturers, can be used so that students will be able to see them as an example. Just kind of having that figure there in the position that yes, there are these positions in our university structure, I should say.
I don't think that's enough. Recently we've seen disparity in how black people are represented in the workforce and how we're represented in higher education, and I don't feel as if we hold the uni to account for these stuff. I mean, I'm a master's student, I've left and been in employment, and I've seen the disparity in terms of those who are black who go into positions of leadership in those companies. And when I was reflecting upon it, when I was at uni, I was thinking, what did the uni actually do to make sure that when I left this institution, that I was equipped with the skills to make sure I could compete, but to also make sure that I wasn't facing those racial biases. And I think too long we have people that just go into the uni culture and then they're not equipped with the skills that they need, and it just perpetuates and we don't actually find a solution for it. So I think we need to hold the uni more to account for stuff like this.
You say hold us to account. I believe that we do have a responsibility in terms of supporting our students, and I believe that that responsibility is through working through the academic structures like schools that are set up. But there's also a responsibility, I think, for students to actually engage as well. And the one thing that I've noticed is that for various reasons, which probably I don't understand, some students tend to engage better than others. And I think there's a responsibility to act, in a sense, as a partnership. I don't think this microphone likes me. I think there's a sense in which it needs to be a partnership between the student and the university as well. And in terms of employability, a lot of that should be incorporated through your curriculum and indeed outside your curriculum. What degree did you do?
History and politics.
Yeah, history and politics. That may be one of the more challenging subjects in that area. But I believe, and I share your view, that actually the teaching staff working with professional services staff should actually equip students to be ready for the world of work. And we are doing that. I mean, I arrived here 5 years ago, and the employability in terms of our students going to graduate level jobs was in the 60s. Believe it or not, it's now at 82%, 82.6%, so we made great strides in a short period of time. You know? I can't account for what happens out there in the workforce. And, I wouldn't disagree with the fact that a lot of companies out there are run by white, middle-class men and women. But my belief is that we challenge that. And we challenge that actually through making sure that we're properly equipped and qualified to be able to compete with them. And for my life, in a sense, when I went to university, to be quite frank, the majority of black people on the campus came from Nigeria or Ghana directly. There were very few people that were UK-born black students. I remember one from economics, another one doing law, and I did biochemistry for my first degree. But all three of us worked hard and all three of us got good degrees. I suppose, to turn our attention to the question, it says HE establishments are normally run by rich white men and women who don't understand the problems and issues surrounding the black community. This university is run by an executive group of 6 people. 4 of them are female, 2 of them are male. And they are middle-aged. They're certainly in the middle of their lives. I wouldn't say any of them were rich. I certainly haven't encountered any that were rich. They're well paid for what they do, but I wouldn't call them rich. And they certainly weren't born rich. I know one that had very humble beginnings, actually, but worked hard to get to where she wanted to go to. And for me, When I came to university, I stayed on. I managed to get a decent degree. I did my PhD here at Kent, and I went into a research position, senior research officer with the Royal Postgraduate Medical School, now part of Imperial College. And I thought, I'm not really cut out for research. What do I want to do? And I asked myself that question. And I thought, there's an opening in HE, working in HE administration. And I thought, there's an opening here. What do I need to be able to succeed in that? And for me, actually, it was doing a master's course funded by the Science and Engineering Research Council in Information Technology. And that's how I got my foot in the ladder. If I were to say to you, how many of you here want to work in higher education as an academic? How many would put your hands up? A couple. How many of you would want to work in HE administration going forward? One. And I think that's the problem. I think for us to be able to change things, many more of us have to come forward. For me, it's something that I encountered probably by accident in the library, and I applied, and I applied for a job. My first job in HE was at the University of North London, and I got given an opening, an opportunity, and I grabbed that with both hands. But the reason why I got where I am today, the reason why I was able to rise up the ladder, is because I actually worked incredibly hard, and I happen to have been rewarded for that. But I'm not saying that if you don't work hard. What I'm saying is that I would welcome others joining me on my journey. I'm the only black director at this university, and there are 4 professors, as I understand it, 1 head of school who's black, and I'd love for others to be able to join me within the university and to be able to change things. When I asked the question, how many of you intend to go into academia, a couple of hands went up. When I asked the question, how many want to go into HE administration, 1 hand went up. Most of you probably thought, what the hell is he talking about? Didn't you? And HE administration at this institution covers a whole plethora of things: marketing, communications, research services. It covers student records, finance. The same sorts of profiles of jobs you would see in the private sector, you see in universities. And I would actually welcome black people applying for those jobs. Only 1 black person has applied for a job in the 5 years that I have been at this university. And I wish it were more. Yeah?
So as you can see, it just comes back down to, at the end of the day, we are the source of solving our own problems. And if we rise as, I'll say, a race to actually analyze that, look, it takes us actually seeing what's going on in terms of the academic society, in terms of the way academia is run, we can actually improve in it within ourselves. Going swiftly on anyway, the next topic is, how do we, and what are we doing to promote black excellence and inspire and empower black people to be their best and take up leadership roles? So I'm just going to pose it back to the panel.
From a Kent Union perspective, in, I think it was February, we had the back-to-back history event. During that, we did bring back some inspirational speakers and some influential people to try and inspire you that way. Like I say, we have Omoladi's role to show you that we are here, we can achieve, we can be in leadership roles, we can do what we want, and we can aspire to do more as well. Again, like I said, I'm here. Hopefully you feel inspired by me being here. Also, myself, Stephen, Omolade, and a group of us are working on a project called the Kent Africa Summit, which we hope to launch in February or March in 2018. And this is where we are going to have inspirational people coming down, people in big places in banks, in government, coming down to talk to youth students about the problems that Africa are facing, about diaspora and so on, and what we can do as a community to help those problems and help to make them better for us. So it is about bringing people down, but getting to work with student success as well, and making sure that we have those people in place, but also asking you guys what you want to see and who you want to come down. So I think it's definitely a collaboration piece that we need to work on.
Yeah. So one thing I want to say is that I think all of us on this panel are a representation of, the benefits of getting into leadership roles. We're a representation of empowerment, but also excellence as well. And I think one thing I also want to say as well as BME officer and for Black students is that last year there was a committee called the Multicultural Committee, and this year it's going to be carrying on again. But instead of just a group of us sitting in a room and discussing, there's going to be leadership roles within it. So there'll be a president, secretary, like as a normal society, so students understand how it is to be in a leadership role and hopefully get the skills that Wayne was talking about, or sorry, not Wayne, Tyrone was talking about, like the skills that you need when you get out of university, and you can utilize it. And it's not just joining societies, but you can also join me in helping me with the different things we want to achieve this year. So yeah.
Yeah, this kind of follows on from the conversation which we've been having. I think for, as Wayne was pointing out, I mean, in terms of looking at my experience in working as a student union president, but also in this role and looking at and being able to see a wide breadth of universities, it's very clear that there aren't that many senior Black leaders at all. And just kind of flip that on its head, kind of going back to what you were saying, I mean, why are there so many white leaders? It's because they're very good at reproducing themselves, both in terms of, well, not quite like that, but both in terms of their, but like, okay, so in terms of, if there's a vacancy, often people who go for jobs have been approached because, you think, oh, who would be a good person for this job, and you approach them. Or the very fact that you've seen people in those positions means that that's not a barrier. You can already see yourself in those positions. So I think for many white students across society, when they see leadership roles, that they don't even have to get over this type of, can I see myself in it? Of course they can see themselves in it because the people in those roles look like them, or their parents are doing it, or they've got a family friend who's doing it. Black people don't have that luxury. We don't have those connections, and that's when we talk about white privilege. That's what white privilege is, that connection, which often makes it look like hard work, when actually they've had that support, they've had those networks. So I think one of the things which we can do is try and build those networks. I think when we leave universities, and I've noticed this even in my own friendship group, there is a tendency. A lot of people who I worked on societies with at university in leadership positions, there is a risk that you kind of go out into the world of work and there you go, it's lost, and you're not thinking about how can we help and support people who are coming behind us, how can we make sure that there's a vacancy at my position. We're seeing whether there's somebody at our university or with our ACS, that we can say, think about applying for this, because that's all it takes. With lots of these jobs, all it takes is someone just have a conversation with you, and then you feel you have that extra confidence to apply for that job. In wearing a slightly different hat, we're trying to set up an organisation which does some of that, called Black Impact, which is about trying to create a national network, a youth-led organisation, trying to set up a national network, trying to support, train, and empower Black students in order to give them that network which you get if you are in a position of privilege, and trying to some extent recreate that. Because yes, it is about making sure that you work hard and making sure that you get the good grades, but not only do you have to work twice as hard, you have to have a sense of where the opportunities are. And when you leave university, it can be very, very, especially for our generation, like with the challenges that we have with getting ourselves on the housing ladder and all that kind of thing. It's completely compounded if you don't have those networks, if you don't really understand how the world will work. And especially if you've done better than your parents, that's the other thing. A lot of, certainly people, middle-class white students are sort of trying to do as well as they can, well as their parents, and trying to sort of catch up with where they've got to. Whereas for many Black people, it's about, they've already, by being at university, they've done better than their parents. So when their parents start helping them with their homework, those days are gone. It's about, and it can be quite an isolating experience. So for me, and then finally, before I stop talking, I think it's really, really important as well to recognise the burden it can be of being a leader as well, in a very white-dominated space, because people are looking to you, and there's an expectation. And I know from my institution there was one Black professor at the university, and she didn't have any time to do her research because she was being expected to be the Black voice on all these different committees, and that was, fatigue. It was really, really difficult. So an understanding and an awareness that we need to make sure that those people as well in leadership positions are supported, and they can do that by supporting each other nationally if they can't do it in their own context.
That's wrong.
So for those that don't know, Ante was the student union president at Cambridge. And a question I was going to ask you, just two-part. One, how did you overcome that barrier of running for president in the institution which is historically just very, very white? And also, how did you balance your job and, like you said, being that black representative and the pressure of being a black representative in such a prestigious place?
So it's a very easy answer to the first question. It was made 10 times easier because I took over from a black woman. So like that was not even a consideration. She had a couple of chats with me and was like, you should think about it, you should consider it. So again, and it makes such a big difference. And our team, I mean, I find it, I still don't quite understand whether it's just a random fluke or whatever, because about 1.4% of the undergraduate population is black at Cambridge, not like, I think over 20% here. Yet 50% of my officer team was black, which must have been down to the fact that, I mean, in Cambridge especially, if you look at those students who are most politically active, actually it is quite a diverse group, because we understand, or have understood the need of making sure that we fight for ourselves and for each other. And a strong culture of that, I think, is very, very useful. But it was difficult. I mean, I had it in two different... I think by the time I was doing the student union stuff, I was quite used to going into a space and being the only black person in the room. So actually the experience of university helped. I also did sociology, and studied race and ethnicity, did my dissertation on whether Oxbridge is institutionally racist, which was slightly personally quite difficult to do because you're dealing with stuff which affects you. But I think I had a good understanding of the space and the way it works and kind of strategies for. But it's about having a good, strong support network. I had a good, strong officer team. I had people that I knew in the institution. I had people I knew at home as well who were very, very supportive as well. But it's really, self-care, very, very important. Make sure you're looking after yourself, because in that, being that leader, people don't always understand where you're coming from in those spaces, and it's about having the confidence often to just remind yourself that, certainly in my position, I'd been elected to represent students, and I knew what students' concerns were, and having that confidence in yourself, which, if you come from a more privileged background, you're automatically, you're used to having, but it's constantly trying to build up some of that resilience as well.
Amity, can I ask you, what conclusion did you come to in your thesis?
Is Oxbridge institutionally racist? I said that's not really the question, obviously. The question is how, and what is it doing in order to maintain its role in... so you would have seen the statistics that came out, I think 2 days ago, about the admissions and the fact that Oxbridge seems to even be going backwards in terms of its the extent to which black and minority ethnic students and students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds are represented there. And for me, it was looking at what techniques does it use in order to reproduce that inequality. And quite often, if you speak to university people, they'll tell you that, it's not our problem. Like, students come here, or students aren't just getting the grades. I was like, right, if that is the problem, this is the most prestigious research institution in this country. Why haven't you got money into researching this as an issue and then providing recommendations? Because if the problem is the schools, why aren't you telling the government that they need to raise the attainment in the schools? The fact of the matter is that there's a lot that they're not doing. And also, again, it's that when you have a very complicated admissions process, it's the people whose parents have been there and who go to schools where they have teams which are set up to send students there. I have a friend who's doing, hopefully she won't watch this. I have a friend who is working at a consultancy where parents at some of the top schools in this country pay up to £25,000 for this organisation to give them the roadmap to Oxbridge. That is what I had no idea that existed. That is what we're up against, And it's not just about the network, it's about people spending money, large amounts of money, to buy them that privilege. So that's kind of what we're up against. And anything we can do to work together to make sure we're supporting each other, the better.
Yeah. So I concur with your points. From my perspective, I could answer this in making five different points. So I think raising aspiration, right, through association, I think that's fundamentally important, and it comes back to the general consensus. If you can see success in people that look like you, that will act as a catalyst to raise your aspiration. But the second thing I'd say, and this is fundamentally important, develop informal and as well as formal relationships. So that ties into the whole idea of cultural capital, the unwritten rules, the things that aren't in the book. How do we do this? Because if you don't get these unwritten rules, it will be quite difficult for you to navigate the landscape, right? Microaffirmations is another thing that I would mention. And microaffirmation is, for want of a better terminology, a leg up, giving someone a leg up, These small acts of kindness. So for instance, you look around at your peers, you've done first year and you know how challenging it could be. You see a first year student who probably look like you, reflecting on your experience, it's almost saying to them that, look, I know it's tough, I've been there, but I did this to navigate the space at that time, right? You deserve to be here, you're here on merit, so it's affirming, their qualification to be here, and assisting. So it comes back to what we're saying, developing these informal networks and partnerships, affirming each other. I think process is very important, because quite often what we do, we focus on just getting a degree. We just want a degree, whichever way. But unfortunately, once you've gotten that degree, there's another hurdle to get the next degree, right? And then once you've gotten that, you have to get the next qualification. So in the absence of a focus on the process of getting the degree or the qualification, what happens is you leave this environment and you go into the industry. And you've totally forgotten or have no insight as to process. So how do you do it? You don't know how to do it. So I would say focus on the process, and the product probably will follow. If the process is correct, the product will follow, I think. And then the last thing I would say on this is I think we need to depart from this whole idea of a successful person as being the normative sports person or entertainer. For me, personally, that's a sort of flawed thought. Success is a relative, subjective experience and a journey. So I think if we, as a people, we see success in, that athlete, he's successful or she's successful, she's making loads of money. But what about the journey? What about the process? So I think let us depart from that notion. I can cite a couple of Mondays ago, Akala stepped in. We hosted Akala, and one of the specific reasons why Akala was brought to this institution was to showcase, right? Just to show you guys that you can actually be successful at your vocation and also be successful, at something that people would classify as a talent, a skill, right? And I think that was quite important. Now, for us as a people, we need to look into ourselves. What can we control? What are the things that we can control? Are we controlling those things? That's the fundamental questions. Are we controlling the factors that we can control? Over to you, Wayne. Sorry.
Sounds like an entry. I feel almost as if I'm in an episode of Star Trek. I would concur with a lot of what my colleagues have said. And I think one of the key words for me would be empowerment. And my view is that starts off with each of us taking individual responsibility. And we talk about leadership roles and what can we do. I would encourage engagement with co-curricular activity, clubs, societies, taking leadership roles in all of those structures. And I think that's a starting point that you can do. Because I think when you go to employers, they want to see what else did this person do outside of their course. 80% of graduates now get good degrees to one-stroke first. They're looking for that little bit extra. What did you do? And taking leadership roles within club societies in Kent Union in this institution, I think is a good starting point. My view actually is I quite like this year's Black History Month. I like this idea of role models and inspirational speakers. I think that's a great idea, and I commend Aaron for doing that. And we've got 4 black professors. We've got a number of inspirational speakers that have and will be speaking. And I think that idea of role model is actually quite a powerful narrative, I think, for engaging and encouraging and promoting excellence. I agree, it's not just about sport. We have successful black people in politics. No matter what you think of their politics, no matter what you think of them, they're successful. Chukwuemeka, David Lammy, whether or not you like her, Diane Abbott, and others have done very well in politics. And we have Zadie Smith, a great writer, and we have a number of other successful black people that we can look up to, as well as actors like Idris Elba, for example. And a personal favourite of mine, Lenny Henry, or should I say Sir Lenny Henry, actor, comedian and writer as well. And I think there are lots of role models out there. And my view is, it starts off or can be helped by mentoring. And I, for one, don't mind mentoring an acceptable number of individuals. But for me, if I put myself forward, then there's got to be a seriousness on your part to want to engage with that. Because my time is precious and I want people who are serious. And my view is there are lots of positive role models out there for us to actually aspire to. And for me as well, I think about my role, and I chair the Student EDI Operations Group. In my department, the Student EDI, that's Equality, Diversity, Inclusivity Officer, actually reports to me because I place great importance. And because I place great importance on that role, it reports directly to the director, so we can actually get things done. I'm also a member of the Student Success Project EDI Steering Group, which Jan's also a member of there, and David works with Jan in that area. And that promotes the sorts of initiatives that the university is taking to actually close that attainment gap and to retain our students. And I strongly support that initiative, actually, because I think we want to bring that attainment gap down to a point where it doesn't actually exist. That's our aspiration, that's our design. Actually understanding and identifying the problems is the way that we actually can do that and empower and support students. And something else that I'm exploring at the moment is the Quality Challenge Unit. They've come out with a race equality charter. That's a national initiative, aims to improve the representation, progression and success of minority ethnic staff and students in higher education. I'm currently exploring that to see, we want to see if we can actually commit to delivering that. I would like us to commit as a university, but we have to explore the feasibility of being able to do that. And we've invited ECU down to the university to give us a presentation on that. And I would like for us to be able to implement that charter, resources permitting. But for me, actually, it's about that key issue of empowerment, looking at positive role models and mentoring as well. And I think there are lots of negative things being said about ethnic minorities in this country, not just black, but others. We have to acknowledge it's wider than that. And I think we can make a difference. But I agree, we have to be able to work together to achieve that. We don't have the thousands of pounds that you mentioned in terms of Oxbridge.
So, just hearing that, I just wanted to pose a question to the audience. How many BME students do you think actually go to the University of Kent? If I could just have random figures. Sorry? The percentage, so 10% more. Okay. Anyone else? 17. Is that right?
It's over at
At the University of Kent, there are 38% BME students. That being said, what I'm trying to get out of that is that we do need to rise up and be our own inspiration. As much as we can say, well, we need people to empower us, we're at university, we are educated, we are not a lecturer. We need to be our own type of inspiration to actually do bigger things, make bolder steps. At the end of the day, you could say, oh, I didn't do good because the lecturer was white. You need to do more than what the lecturers put up there to do. So let us rise up as one race. At the end of the day, as I always say, black lives, black minds, and black experience do matter. So if we could just have a question from the audience, the lady at the back.
Hi, so my name's Rachel. I'm actually a new trustee on the student union, so I'm really happy to be here today. I actually came to Kent University, I've got my degree here, and I now head up diversity and inclusion for the world's largest shipping company. I've been in diversity and inclusion for about 13 years, and this is a really tough topic. It's a piece about taking up leadership roles. I've been in big banks, investment banks, searching for students like you, trying to hire students like you, and exactly what the panel have said about this whole piece around networking, about doing more than just what your lecturers are asking you, extracurricular activities, being the best you can be, and also playing it back as well. So who else are you helping? The mentoring, students that maybe from your schools, how are you helping them up? So all of these things I think are so important, and also where people like myself, so heads of diversity and inclusion, go out there, find out which companies you want to work for, get in contact with people who are at the companies, build your networks now. That process piece, I think that you were talking about, look at the process, because if you don't build up your contacts now, it becomes much harder once you've got your degree. I know you've all got your heads down doing your degrees and you're studying, but you've got to start thinking now, who do I need to know? Who needs to know me? And what do I want to be known for? I think that's the most important thing. So there are people like me who are looking for students like you, but you've also got to put your hands up. You've got to empower yourselves and say, I want it, and you've got to start to reach out to different organisations now.
Absolutely.
So I just want to agree with everything that
The lady, agree?
Hi, I'm a student leader and I'm in student rep as well. And I find the biggest problem we have as black students or big BAME students is lack of engagement. When I've forgotten your name, sorry, the Director of Student Services talks about bringing good role models. 2 days ago I attended the Anne-Marie Imafidon lecture. She's a STEM champion in the UK. And I was horrified because we tried to book tickets for some people earlier, about 4 hours earlier, we couldn't, fully booked. Last night I went to Baroness Chakrabarti's lecture, fully booked. But when we turned up to, what's her name, Imafidon's lecture, I think I was only one of 5 black people. And in total, only about 22 people attended the whole lecture. And that's a superstar black, you know, she's top of STEM in the country, technology, everything you can think of to do with STEM. Yet people don't attend. And it's the same thing in the school I belong to. There's just a very tangible lack of engagement from black students, from BAME students, whether it's Chinese, whether it's, you know, just generally BAME. And even as a student leader, I struggle with that. I try to engage on Facebook. You don't get any, you know, they'd rather talk to you. A few will talk to you privately on DM, but they don't want to engage as a group. And I think it's all well and good talking about step out, you know, engage, excel, try and be a leader. But how can you do that when the people you're talking to, you know, 38%, how many of us are here?
Can I ask that question to the audience, actually? I'd like to ask, because that engagement issue is something that I've seen, and I'd like to ask why. Can anybody proffer a suggestion or an answer to that?
Can I give you one?
Yeah.
Can I say one? Actually earlier in the academic year, so last year, not this year, I went for the Freshfields scholarship scheme. And to be honest with you, I wasn't made aware of it if it wasn't because of, I say, a few people heard about it. I feel like as though it's all back down to actually the university in itself in terms of actually contacting people, actually getting out the message out there. Because a lot of people, even with email, a lot of people, not that they tend not to look at it, but a lot of people don't feel as though the emails even cater to them. So I feel like it's just all about communication. That is the foundation of people knowing about things. Because word of mouth is what works. However, there's not a lot of you. It's hard to find things around campus, to be honest with you, especially for second and third years who don't live on campus. Yeah, I don't know what everyone.
Can I address that? Okay, so on your point, I take your point wholeheartedly because I think that is a problem. But what I have found, and I think I can speak with great confidence here, I've had a lot of interaction with students over the past 3 years or so at this university. And a lot of this interaction has been face-to-face, talking, getting out and talking to students. So in terms of events and activities and promoting engagement, wider engagement, what I would say, and I say this again with great confidence, look at the movers and shakers. Now for myself as a public health practitioner, if I went in a community and I wanted to disseminate some form of intervention, the first thing I would do, look around the community and find the movers and shakers. I think if events are being put on in this university for students, students are the movers and shakers. Now, on the 10th of October, we had a gala here. And I can tell you, I kid you not, there wasn't one flyer that was printed for that event. And there were over 400 people in the Wolf Lecture Theatre. What I'm saying is the movers and shakers, the ACS, the Kent Union, right? Getting in amongst them, and they will move and shake and mobilize people. That's how it works. This generation is a different generation. This is Generation Z. MySpace, WhatsApp, Snapchat. It tells my age. And I'll put another one, high five. Anyway, on a serious note, social media generally gets the job done. Stephen can tell you, Aaron can tell you, Amaladi can tell you. Not one flyer, 400 students at 6 o'clock in the evening, 400 students. So back to your point about Anne-Marie Maffedon, if you know, it's probably your responsibility to spread the word. Not you personally. Not, posters don't work.
There was Facebook, everything, it was there.
Generally, it's a 10% response rate for posters, and in this day and age, it's gone down to about 5%, right? So what I'm saying is, it comes back to this whole notion of taking personal responsibility, because the university can only do so much. The university prints a flyer, it's going to be blue and white. You won't see it, right? You won't see it. So it is our responsibility. If it interests us, it interests me, I will pass the message. I will share it within my networks. I will build this cultural capital. I will explain to students how this will benefit them. And as I said, the university should not be sort of absolved of all blame. But fundamentally, it has to be a personal responsibility to engage.
And to the director of student services, when you talked about mentoring a student and not seeing enough, people wanting to be in admin or whatever, would you consider creating a placement internship for specifically a BEM student in the university?
My view is that the work that my directorate does operates through academic schools. Those are the appropriate structures for us to operate. And I know that, for example, law is thinking of a mentoring, certainly has a mentoring scheme, but it's thinking of developing or further developing that. And I think we have to work through the established structures. This issue of engagement is actually quite an interesting one. How many of you are aware that it's Employability Festival going on here at the university at the moment? Good. A fair number, but some hands remain down. We put billboards out. You have to be blind not to be able to see them. We put social media, banners, plasma screens, hand out leaflets, booklets. We send emails at Facebook, Snapchat, Generation Z's engaged. We do the best that we can, and then we do a survey at the end of the whole of that. And almost every year, a third of the people that get back to us say, well, we didn't even know it was going on. And it is a challenge for us as a university, actually. And we even have employability contacts in schools whose job it is to promote the events that are happening as well. And I think the only answer is to adopt a diverse approach, be it face-to-face, social media, every channel that is available to reach out to students. But the point that's been made by the panel, which is one that I would concur with, at the end of the day, there is a degree of personal responsibility to take hold of that for yourself. And I think that's the only way you can succeed.
We had a question from Twitter, which was, as we all know, young black people, especially young black women, are at a higher risk of mental health issues. How can we encourage these conversations in the university so as to give our young black students the coping mechanisms needed for the future?
I think this question, based on experience, I think Wayne might be the best person to answer this. But what I can say as a precursor to Wayne's answer is that Kent sees the highest incidence of mental health issues being reported, right? So it is a problem, particularly amongst the BME community, intersectionally amongst the black community. So that is a significant problem. Services are stretched, healthcare services are stretched, and the university is stretched also to provide services to facilitate these needs. Now, one of the things that has come up within my remit is the lack of diversity within our support services, right? And we are aware of that. I have mentioned that to a committee which has taken it to the Vice Chancellor's office. So there is ongoing work to recruit from the BME community so that our services can be representative of our students. But Wayne, I think you are probably better placed to speak about or sort of angle on this.
Yeah. What I would say, first of all, addressing the resource issue, is you can only appoint from the pool of applicants that you have. And unfortunately, the pool of applicants that we have are almost always white. And that's why I'd like to see many more black people applying for sorts of jobs in my area, and actually going into HE as well. Correct when you say mental health is an issue. It's actually not an issue just for this university, it's an issue for the entire HE sector. Every institution is reporting an increase in students with mental health conditions or difficulties. And not only is that happening, but secondary services in the community are being eroded as well. And universities are expected to actually pick up the slack. And we're not specialist institutions. Yeah, we normally refer through to the specialists to provide that support. But it's quite big in this university. I mean, I often cite the figure that at the end of June 2017, we had recorded 1,078 students that actually disclosed they had a mental health condition in this university. That's over 5% of the student body. Yeah, that's quite a high proportion. And I don't know if I'm getting a message there. Hopefully it's not a Theresa May moment. I certainly don't intend to start coughing. But mental health is a challenge for us. And what I can say on my part is that I have asked the university for more resource to support our students, and the university has provided that support, but there are still waiting lists, and I accept that. And the one thing I've done is that in the medical centre they have a psychological therapist service, and that psychological therapy service actually services the whole of East Kent, but our students get actually a proportionally higher part of that service than anywhere else. And that service is going to leave the university this summer because the Franciscan Centre was sold, and we could potentially have lost them. And I fought tooth and nail to retain that service on campus, and it's now housed in Elliott College. Because my view is that I want to see all the resources available to support our students, whether they come from the medical centre, for which I have oversight responsibility, or whether it comes from student support and well-being as well. And you know, mental health is something that actually shows no respect in terms of race, actually. Every race is affected, and we have to provide support for every single student. And I think that's important to note, and support them as best we can so they can actually complete their course and get their degrees. It's a big challenge, and for my staff actually an ongoing one, and the number of cases sees no sign of actually abating. If I compare figures for December last year to where we are this year, Kent has a higher proportion than most other universities. I don't know why that is the case, but our aim is to ensure that we can support them as best as we can, irrespective of what race they are, black, white, yellow, Asian, or whatever. Yeah, and we will continue to do so as best as we're able.
Okay. From a union perspective, I wanted to reassure you that mental health is a priority for all our officers. So all 5 officers this year have mental health at the top of our priority list. So we've just had Mental Health Week. We're doing a male mental health campaign this year as well, trying to tackle stigma around male mental health. And also in the second term, we're going to be launching a mental health campaign called My Mate, because I believe if you have an issue, you don't go straight to a doctor, you go to your friends first. So it's about making sure that they have that support mechanism, they know how to deal with that, and they know how to signpost you. So just so you know that is a priority for us, and we are going to try to tackle that this year.
Can I just add to that? I think that's important. It's about referral through to central services. Don't try to manage the situation yourself. You're not experts. Yeah? Refer through to central services as soon as you know. And if you're not comfortable with that, then maybe go to your student support officer or equivalent in your academic school who can do the referral for you, or your college master as well. If you don't know who your college master is, send me an email and I'll tell you. And if you've got trouble or problems with your college master, then come to me.
Yeah, I think one thing I wanted to actually say. One thing I actually wanted to say was that I actually work as a resident support officer for accommodation. So I work for Parkland and India accommodation.
You don't work for accommodation, you work for student services.
Student services. Sorry, I work for student services. So a lot of my role actually deals with mental health and referring students to well-being, which is actually a perk for my BME role, because now I'm quite aware about the different services within the uni, and I can help most BME students to know where to go to when it comes to mental health and the support services that are in place. So I think one thing I'm planning on doing in terms of mental health is a student actually referred me to a company who does focus groups for students to discuss different topics to do with mental health. So tackling mental health with men, especially black men as well, and especially black females as well. And that will be something that will be happening throughout the rest of the year. But yeah, just what's that?
You're really good work.
Going back to why the community doesn't respond, at least in my friend group, in secondary school, I have this frustration where when I mention something academic, everyone rolls their eyes. You have this stigma of being a geeky type. And I feel a lot of people, there are certain societies that I would have joined, and I'd ask my friends, and they'll be like, no, why do you want to do that? That's a white thing to do. They just feel you can't excel there, and you don't want to be that one person by yourself, even though, now, I realize if I'm going to get anywhere, sometimes I will end up being the only black person there. Or if you apply for a leadership position, some people will tell you you didn't merit it. It's just because they needed someone of color in the panel so that it looks kind of equal. So that kind of thing actually leads you to having low mental health in a way. And in the community, mental health is, at least where I come from, mental health is not something they talk about. If you're feeling sad, get over it. They'll tell you about it. Some parents will tell you things like, when I was younger, my dad did this. My parents didn't do that to me. I'm lucky, but some of my friends, I've talked to them, and their parents will tell them how they suffered in the village. So if you're feeling sad, too bad. And I'm like, this is a different generation. So I feel in the community as friends, if you have a geeky kind of friend, you need to be careful how you talk to them and how you respond to people's different hobbies and stuff, because that was a big problem for me. I like academics and stuff, and a lot of my friends just used to say, you're too white, you're not. They used to exclude me, and when you feel excluded, you just don't want to go for it. You try and conform with what you feel is normal, and I feel that also affects mental health as well, because it let me being depressed for a long time. So as teenagers as well, there's a lot you can do. If your friend is interested in joining a society, even if you're not interested, encourage them to go. Kind words, just a little, oh, that seems cool. Even if you're lying, you're not interested. The moral support that their friend thinks it's cool or it's okay goes a long way.
I think that comes back down to the whole idea of that micro-affirmation. The same micro-affirmation that we're talking about. That small act of kindness, that kind word, and that lifts people, actually. So once you connect, you develop networks, and you within these networks, you're getting these positive reinforcement. It does help, actually, to mitigate mental ill health.
I think
No, go ahead.
I think one thing I also want to say to you is the fact that if you do have people who are telling you, oh, it's too geeky or whatever, don't listen to them. Take that as an initiative to actually get involved. Because one of the reasons why I actually ran for this role was because I knew that there wasn't going to be that, well, before I knew that Aaron got the position, I knew there wasn't going to be someone there to actually represent our voices, and I gave you the initiative to actually run for the role. So I'm telling you to actually run for whatever you want to do. If you see something and you know that you want to do it, just do it. It doesn't matter if you're going to be the one black face, because you're going to inspire someone else to want to run the next year.
Can I just encourage you and tell you, whatever you want to do in life, never let other people decide who you are. You know yourself better than anyone else. You know, just be you, do you, even if you're the only black person.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. You know what you want at the end of this degree or what you want in life at the end of it.
Yes.
Yes.
Is the lady with the mic?
Yeah, back to the whole promoting of just different things going on within your school. In a way, I'm lucky because I belong to SSPSSR, Sociology, Social Policy and Social Research, and Jill does push a lot of the initiatives out there. Like through that, I was able to go into academic peer mentoring, and I'm an academic peer mentor, and there's different roles to apply for. But at the same time, I do feel like with a lot of the other schools, including mine, sometimes these opportunities aren't pushed out, so you won't see it until the application's closed, or you never even knew about it. So with me, I've only been able to get into it in my final year. If I'd known about it from first year, which to be honest I didn't, and I don't think a lot of people did, they would have been able to pick up these roles and then build up their own CV, so then when they're going out into the real world, they've got more to put on their CV and look like, okay, I've done more than just my degree. So I think in terms of actually pushing opportunities, schools need to look at actually talking to the lecturers, making sure it's always out there, talking to the seminar leaders, making sure it's always out there, because many times it's not, and we won't see it until it's the end, and we have nothing to do about it.
What is the best way of getting that message out to you?
To be fair, seminars are compulsory, so I feel like a lot of people will be able to hear about the opportunities then, because that's something that we have to go to. Lectures also. Sometimes I feel like emails aren't the best way because I at least get 20 a day, so I can't go through them all the time. But I do feel like seminar leaders and lecturers should push it at every opportunity.
What I would say to you, though, and I take your point, but in thinking about this process that I certainly keep harping on about, emails is a part of the process, because if I tell you, and Jan and Wayne can speak richly about this, the first quarter of our day is dealing with emails, right? I'm almost afraid to open an email because I know I'll have to address it. 20 minutes later, I'm still dealing with this one email. So, you know, checking your emails, that's a fundamental skill, I would say, a transferable skill that will help you in your career, right? So whilst it might be good for the lecturer, and it is good, I take your point, you know, embed these things within the curriculum, and the lecturer gives it validation by telling you about these opportunities. But fundamentally, again, it comes back down to personal responsibility to ensure that you are owning the process and honing this process, right? Email, that's a part of it. It's a big part of it. And students don't engage with emails. But unfortunately, you graduate, and all of a sudden, you're in a job. You're getting 40 emails a day, right? So I think, as I said, I take your point, but think about the process as well.
So the panel has touched on this earlier. When you say that there's a burden on black leaders in HE to kind of be the voice of kind of black issues, was that coming from your own student body, other student bodies around the country, or kind of your white counterparts looking for a black perspective? They finally have someone they can access and speak to, or do you just feel like you were being wheeled out as a figurehead?
So I was when I brought that, I was referring to institutions and often the academics within them. Depends where you go, obviously, but certainly from my experience, where there was only one black professor, that was she was required to do a lot of the representation work for all the black people in the yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because that was the highest ranking black person. So whenever there were any, oh, we should probably have a black person on this committee, then.
Do you feel like that helped the cause or kind of just diluted her?
Well, so it's a double-edged
Yeah.
sword. So on the one hand, if there's a committee which is addressing issues which affect all students, it's so important to have that black voice. If you don't have enough, if you don't have a pool to choose from, just like one person, the burden that ends up being on that one person can be so much so that, and in her case, I mean, she was my supervisor for my dissertation, but she said that it was difficult for her to be doing her own research as an academic because she was spending so much time doing all this representative stuff. So it's just having that understanding and that awareness that it can be quite difficult.
Oh, okay.
So just to put out there for the mental health, obviously in the BME community, the African Caribbean Society, alongside the Kent Union, are looking to do an event in November, focused obviously around mental health awareness. So do keep posted. If you have a social media, on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow us. On Facebook, we're the University of Kent African Caribbean Society. On Twitter and Instagram, we are known as the UKC ACS Twitter page.
Not MySpace.
Going on to the next one. So the next question is, what do we see as being the main issue facing the black community in higher education?
So I personally see the main issues facing the black community to be one of access, whether it be finance or people from different backgrounds being able to access higher education. From the union perspective, in terms of the finance aspect, we do offer funds that are accessible to everyone who can't afford certain things. So if you can't afford gym membership or activities, you do have the Access to Activities Fund, and we will pay up to 50% of your membership and your kit. There's a hardship fund as well, that you run alongside the university, and if you are finding finance to be a struggle, we obviously offer the advice centre as well, and they can give you advice on how to budget and how to get funds, stuff like that. That's the first sort of issue. The second issue I find in higher education for black people is the fact that our curriculum does not reflect us. So I know that NUS run a campaign called Why is My Curriculum White? Currently at the union, we run a campaign called Diversify My Curriculum. At the moment, I think it's run around the idea like if you want to have a book in your degree that is written by a black person, you can put it forward and they might put it in. But we want to do a lot more along that this year, and that is again a big priority for your officer team this year. A few weeks ago, I went to the Kevin Hilton talk at Medway, and I spoke to him about this campaign. And what he told me is that he's the first sports and exercise science professor at Leeds University, and he said that at Leeds, the School of Psychology actually have done a pilot scheme of this, and they actually led on that. So in the School of Psychology, they've actually looked at their curriculum and they're trying to change it and make sure that it is more inclusive. So what I'm going to do and what your officer team this year are going to do is try to maybe do like a pilot scheme at the university, because we acknowledge that we can't just change everything at once. We think if you change something small and start with something smaller first, see how it goes, you can then influence the bigger things. So I think we're going to look to do a pilot scheme in the future, but yeah, that is the issues I think. Yeah.
Okay. I think speaking from a personal perspective, one of the issues that Aaron mentioned, and is also something that I go through, is finances. So from a personal perspective, I'm one of thousands of students in the UK who are not eligible for student finance because we're not British citizens, although we've lived here for all our lives. So there's many students within the university who are actually affected by this. And the sad thing is the university doesn't actually have support systems in place for us because we're classed as international students, although we're not international students. So I think one of the things I'm planning on doing is working with another student, who's supposed to be in the room, she's gone now, but is working with another student to actually provide a project or a support system in place for the students in my position, because I know how hard it is to actually be at university with no form of support, and it takes a toll on your mental health, and it also takes a toll on you and your studies as well. But also the Why is My Curriculum White? That's another initiative I'll be working on. Last year there was the Diversify My Curriculum initiative, which I'll be taking on this year as well, and speaking to more schools about how they're having more representation in terms of the literature that we're reading. So yeah.
Just at a very high level across higher education nationally, the four sort of main areas that we try and look at is access, retention, attainment, and progression. So access to higher education, and which courses. Retention is about whether or not black students are staying on and completing their courses, and we know that they're more likely, whilst they are actually accessing higher education more, they're more likely to drop out. Then attainment, we know that there is quite a serious black attainment gap in this country. So if you are black, you're 26% less likely to get a first or a 2-1 nationally across this country, which is just not acceptable at all. So there's a lot of the work I'm doing around this area is trying to make sure that institutions are dealing with that. I spoke to your Vice Chancellor today, and she seems very, very keen to get on top of this and tackle this. She's just come into post, so that's encouraging. Quite often it's the senior leadership, sometimes who are pretending it's not a problem, and that's the first step. So we're already past that line. I know there's a lot of work being done here about that, but obviously more needs to be done. And then finally, what I said earlier at the beginning about progression, that's both progression in terms of employability, in terms of jobs, but that's also progression in terms of progressing into academia, and then being that pipeline back into the senior leadership positions within institutions as well. So those are the kind of broad four areas that I think are some of the main challenges, which face all students, but particularly the black community in higher education.
Yeah, I think thanks for that. I think my idea of the challenges would corroborate with yours as well. So I'm looking at progression, representation, institutional buy-in as well. So in terms of institutional buy-in to programs that address progress and attainment, so we're looking at things like the Race Equality Charter. And I know Wayne mentioned that he is keen to advance this initiative here at Kent. But just to put it in perspective, so there are only 30 member universities of this charter. Only 30 universities signed up to be members, right? And only of that 30, only 10 universities have actually been awarded a Race Equality Charter Mark Award. Bear in mind, there are over 100 universities across the sector, right? So for me personally, I think there's a lack of commitment there, and particularly my hypothesis is that maybe because there's no funding attached to it, it doesn't stimulate the interests of the powers that be. But I think that's a problem. In terms of progression, the pipeline blockage, so we know about the BME attainment gap at an undergraduate level. But also, I'm interested in this pipeline blockage between undergraduate and postgraduate studies. Hands up, how many students in this room will do a master's? So therein we've got that's less than 30%, right? And here lies our problem. How many people think that they can access a master's degree? Realistically, not in terms of qualifications to get there, right? Okay. So for me, there is a problem that precludes a group of students, i.e. black students, from accessing postgraduate qualifications. And also between postgraduate at master's level and PhD, there is a significant problem there. So if we look along that pipeline, we've got a blockage, right? How can we progress to senior roles in HE if there is that blockage? At the summit of that pipeline now, we've got the professors sitting there. Hands up, who can tell me how many black professors there are across the sector? How many? Just to put it in perspective, there are 16,500 and something professors across the United Kingdom. How many do you think are black? 600, good. Anyone else? Okay, 13. 23. So as at 2015-16 ECU data, there were 75 black professors, right? And when we say black professors, what we're talking about is UK domiciled black professors, right? 75 of 16,500 and other numbers. So there lies the problem. But then down at the bottom of this pyramid, we've got a 23% attainment gap. So we have a problem there, right? Hands up, who can tell me how many black professors there are in Kent? just practicing in Kent.
I told you the answer earlier.
No, actually, we've got a problem. How many? Any? 4? Well, we've got 4 universities in Kent, and we have 5 black professors practicing in these universities. So what that represents is a ratio of 1 professor to 15,000 plus students, right? So in terms of that pipeline blockage, there is a problem. But in terms of representation, again, I'll ask another question. How many black vice chancellors are there across the sector?
1 female. 1 female.
1 female, okay. Black vice chancellors, anyone? There are 4. 4 black vice chancellors. The number is not even statistically significant, so the ECU cannot even report on this, right? There lies our problem. For me, those are the fundamental problems. Over to you, Wayne.
I can only think of Baroness Amos, actually.
No, well, I've got the names. So we have Baroness Amos. No, actually, we have four professors of black and minority ethnic origin. So down the road, Canterbury Christ Church University, the black professor is Rama.
Rama, you describe himself as Asian.
BME, right, yes.
BME.
So Rama is a BME professor. We've got one at Liverpool Hope University, that makes it 2. We've got Baroness Amos, and we have 1 other black professor, black vice chancellor. So there are 4 across the sector. So there lies our problem in a nutshell. For me, those are the fundamental problems.
In terms of answering this question, I think Amity from National Union of Students has summed up the key areas, which are access, achievement, retention and progression as well. And a lot of what I say falls within that, and I think there's a 4th category actually, which I'll come to. But when I attended Black History Month, should we call it the review meeting last year? One student actually said to me that in her view she felt life at university was difficult, and I asked why, and she said a sense of belonging. She didn't feel a sense of belonging, and that touched me actually, and that's linked into the retention question. And for her, the Afro-Caribbean Society gave her that sense of belonging. That was her anchor in the institution. And I'm thinking, if we look across the sector, then actually creating those supportive networks is something that we need to do. And I know that it exists in a lot of institutions, but I think that's important in terms of retaining black students. I also think that Access also talks about transition as well. I'm not sure how prepared some black students are for HE. I don't know how you felt when you came in to HE, particularly those that maybe didn't take a traditional route. That may be a challenge for some, and I think that's a challenge for us as a university. But the one thing that I would add to access, retention, achievement and progression is this idea of taking up support for black students across the entire sector. I looked at the statistics that we have internally, and we know how many black students we have. In terms of UK domiciled, it's 13%, but if you take into account the whole student body, it's much more than that going forward. I looked at how many actually are registered for ILPs. It's 6.5%, considerably less than the numbers that are represented in the total population. And why are our black students reticent about coming forward for support that provides a level playing field with other students in this university? Is there some sort of stigma asking for help? Is there some sort of stigma asking for reasonable adjustments? Well, your white counterparts do, and it can make the difference between a 2-2, a 2-1, and a 2-1 and a first. And there's a lack of take-up in that area in terms of coming forward for support and help. And I think if you're representative of the sector, that's a big issue. and a problem for us that we need to get to grips with. And that's, that support also includes engaging with your academic advisor. Who here has actually met their academic advisor? Oh, that's impressive, actually. Thank you. What about engaging with student learning advisory service or student support and well-being? Yeah, that's good. But I wonder how many more would benefit from that support if they were to come forward. Because I'm convinced from the information that I've seen that there is significant underrepresentation here. And I think that support could actually make the difference in the classic degree that you can achieve. Okay.
I have a question. During the summertime, obviously during the exam season, I heard I think there's a scheme that opens up every single year where they actually go through lectures and actually help you in terms of actually exceeding in your exams. Yeah, exactly. And one thing I noticed that is not that it was favoritized, but they only chose a certain amount of number. And I was particularly quite upset about it because I was feeling that as though if I had maybe that extra type of help, I would be able to actually reach my potential. And especially the fact that actually the majority of us are paying, internationals obviously 13,000 onwards, students here paying 9,500, 9,250. So in terms of that, how can we make the accessibility of schemes like this more available to the wider range of students rather than just a minority? At the end of the day, we all are paying the same amount of academic fees or even more.
Well, in terms of the schemes that are operated through the university, a lot of them are actually done through referral from academic schools. And I don't know that student learning advisory services, which I think is the area that you're maybe talking about, if I understand the question properly, have actually turned anybody away. And if there's an issue in terms of access, then I suggest that you send me an email and I'll follow that up with the professional service area concerned. But I don't know of them actually having turned away a student if that student is referred through from their academic school. And one thing I forgot to mention, actually, not to change the subject, when it comes to mental health, my department organises a wellbeing festival every year, and we're hoping to do more work with Kent Union on the issue of mental health, because we think it's important, just to say that.
Generally, we've established that there are not that many Black or minority ethnic groups in like professor periods and stuff. For me personally, my academic advisor is white. I don't have a problem with him. He's a really nice man. But I know some people are skeptical. Maybe they don't trust that they would be answered properly or they would be taken seriously because they feel, I don't know, they feel like they don't trust the fact that he doesn't look like them. He might not understand their struggle. And I don't know how to explain to people that he's not going to kill you. He's there to help you, I guess. There's just this whole, like, they're very skeptical. So that's why I find some of my friends will not want to go to their academic advisor or to go and meet their student advisor because he doesn't look like them. Therefore, they have a fear he might be racist. He might not take them seriously. So I don't know how you can advise me to help people to look for that help because it's not only stigma, it's fear of that person before they meet the person, I guess.
I would use one word to answer your question. Professionalism is the word that I'll use. If we appreciate that we are in a multicultural context, right? So if, let's say, Black students are studying in this university, obviously we are within the minority group. But the context in which you'll practice, right, within industry, Black students will become Black professionals as a minority within that group. Now, if you're a professional while you're in industry, in the first instance, you're having a professional relationship. So if you flip the script back a bit, you're seeing your academic advisor, and it's very important for the advisor to understand your context, understand your background, right? But the fundamental thing is, this is a professional therapeutic relationship, right? Where you're presenting your needs and your academic advisor is trying to address these within the confines of their remit. So I think that's the first port of call. Afterwards, the pastoral issues, of course, that's important, and that will come into play. But I think fundamentally, if you can transmit this message that it is professional to approach this relationship as a professional relationship in the first instance. Does that make any sense at all? And I can speak from experience, because I myself, I did my undergraduate studies in a very white university, far whiter than this university. But I can tell you some of the best pieces of advice that I've gotten in my whole academic career is from white academics. So, choose your battles. I would say be professional.
I wouldn't see it as a battle, I have to say. Engagement is not a battle. It's, for me, actually, I would agree about the idea of being professional, because if you're in work and you have an issue or a problem, then you're expected as an adult to be able to talk to your employer or your line manager about that problem. That's the expectation. But there's also a bit of me that's thinking, what is the underlying reason, or what is the concern about coming forward, and actually exploring that as an issue, because what you're talking about is a barrier, and we need to actually understand the nature of that barrier, I think, to be able to address the issue. I think that's important. And the academic advisor is there to provide advice in terms of your academic engagement with the university. But we also have student support officers or equivalent senior tutors or student advisors in schools that are there to take care of your pastoral needs as well. And they're there to provide personal support that may link into some personal issues that you may be having as a student. And also we have other organelles as well in terms of master's offices that you can engage with as well if you're having particular welfare difficulties. But I'd like to be able to explore that issue, what the nature of that barrier that prevents them from actually coming forward and talking to their academic advisor, because they actually need to engage and discuss the issue, and as you would expect to do if you're in the world of work.
If I could just very quickly pick up on that. All I would say is that when tackling a lot of these issues, you do have to work backwards. And this might sound like a very strange analogy, but for example, if in that interaction you were trying to sell someone a product, you would work from the consumer backwards. Now, obviously students are not consumers in that same way, but when you're accessing those services, the people who are delivering the service have to know already, and should be trained to know, either through their representatives, that if you're a black student and you've come through induction and all the support networks you've been all the induction and everything have been run by people who don't look like you, then you're probably more likely not to feel that that you can trust them. So rather, and I understand the point that that there has to be an element of professionalism, but saying that doesn't necessarily mean that this won't keep happening. So you kind of have to start from the other end and go, as much as we'd love them to have that, and maybe we should be thinking about how the induction process works so that we can address it before it ends up in that situation where something does come up and they don't say it. The people who are also delivering the service need to have that in mind, need to be trained to know that actually if a black person comes through, it doesn't necessarily, they may not, or they should be able to spot the signs that maybe not everything is being, and maybe then refer them to somebody else or flag it or have a way of making sure that the support, or design the support network in such a way that they have a way of making sure that their concerns are met, rather than expecting things of students before they've even had the chance to tell them about it. Because, as you said, that problem won't go away. You need to flip it on its head and start from, okay, that might happen because of their context, because where they're from, and because of the way the institution looks. What can we do to make sure that they won't be disproportionately negatively affected? Because otherwise they'll drop out, or they'll have other issues further on down the line, or they won't attain to the same level. And it's in those small interactions, tiny interactions, whether it's not being able to disclose everything with your advisor, it's not signing up for the support systems you need, that build up and build up and build up and lead to the systemic attainment gaps, retention problems that we have. It's not one thing, it's a build up of those things, but you have to work backwards and say, okay, where are the students, how are the students interacting with our services, and then take it from there. And being very careful not to see it as a deficit of the individual, rather than issues that the system has in how it interacts with those individuals.
Can I just add to your point? In my school, KBS, we have academic peer mentoring. We've just gone through the training and all that. And out of the 15, I think we're exactly 50-50, black and white mentors. And the problem we have is people are not signing up to the, mentoring. So a student like that one could have a third, fourth year mentor who's like them, who, you can actually ask and get a mentor who's identifies or you want to identify with. So that could be easier if they can't, identify with the academic advisor. They could go to this fourth, third year student who's a trained mentor and get help that way. Because I think that would help because they see them sort of equally, as opposed to being chatted to feeling intimidated by professors.
I think one of the things that we should be clear though is I'm not sure if students understand that the difference between academic and pastoral support. I'm not sure if there's a clear demarcation there. Because in the example that our friend at the top cited, that sounds like that student would have been benefited from more pastoral support and sought that from an academic source. Is that correct? Am I correct in saying that? Yes. So I think whilst a lecturer should be able to spot the signs, but in the purest form, the academic advisor would advise you on what it says on the tin, academics, right? And signpost you to the pastoral. We would want to think. But pastoral support is very, very important, and it's very important for students to understand that, that sort of demarcation between the academic support and pastoral, because we've got a range of services available for pastoral support. And if you can't identify one service, there's nothing to stop a student from trying to access another service. But I take your point, the academic advisor should be trained, should be culturally competent enough to spot the signs, to identify, to then signpost you to the secondary service. So I take your point wholeheartedly.
But I think that the challenge that you're raising for us, which I don't think we've addressed actually, is not just how you engage, but the fact that they won't engage. And that's the barrier that's the challenge I think for us, actually, is getting them to engage in the first place. And it's something I think that we need to look at. I mean, I know the Student Success Project is looking at all aspects in terms of student engagement, and I know the academic advisor system is one of those aspects that they're actually investigating at the moment. So I'm hoping that we can come to some conclusions in that area.
And if I can share with you, one of the models of academic advisor system that we have piloted in the School of Psychology is a group advisory session. So instead of the traditional one-to-one academic advisor meetings, the meetings are now done in small groups. And the theory behind that is, by association, the silly question that someone would think, oh, I'm going to ask a stupid question here. Someone else in the group might ask that question, and they might normalize some of these issues, right? And within that group advisory session, there is scope now for the student to ask the advisor for a one-to-one if they, deem it necessary. So there are things that we are piloting. We are piloting interventions within the Student Success Project, as Wayne says, and we will disseminate these as we go along.
Can I ask a question of the audience? The panel's mentioned the HE issues as being one of access, retention, achievement, progression, and support. Do you think we've missed anything? Do you think there are other issues that we haven't touched on that perhaps we should have, that aren't linked to that?
I think we should also be looking at outreach projects as well for people in deprived communities and in schools, making sure that those that are transitioning to universities feel affirmed when they come here. Because I think when I was in Kent 4 or 5 years ago, there was a lot less black people than there were currently, and you feel as if you don't resemble your counterparts. You go into your school advisors and you have this conflict. You don't seem to connect with them on any sort of level, especially when you do traditional subject. You are the other. You are a small minority, and it's very difficult then to get engaged with other communities because you rather just get isolated in the whole process. So I think there are those issues I think that should be addressed, and I think also by diversifying our curriculum. So it's about making sure that we as black people feel as if, especially studying history, I came to KED thinking I was going to get enriched by black history, much to my failure. It's making sure that when people are taking these courses that they engage with it, that they also seeing the benefits that that are likely to have once they finish university. Sometimes I don't feel we see those benefits enough to be engaged. We are caught up in the process, which is not the right process. So I think there should be a clear focus when people come to you. The uni should try to make a clear focus that there are a lot of problems when you leave universities, and here's what we're going to do in your 3 years to make sure that you can achieve the best you can, or you can be equipped with the right skills. And I think if you admit that, then I think it's a big injustice to all of us.
I think he's right. When you analyse it from a certain perspective as well, the education system, especially when it comes to getting taught, obviously history in primary school up to high school, at a certain stage is compulsory. And from a certain level, you get taught about the Anglo-Saxons, the Romans, the Egyptians, but you don't learn about people like Mansa Musa, Keita, and Mami Samori Toure. You don't learn about, there's a lot of people that you don't learn about that. I feel like as a community and as a society of the black race, we do need to be to learn about, because at the end of the day, I feel like as what has been the focus of the conversation, which is empowerment and motivation, I feel like our counterparts are motivated because they have historians to live up to. However, us as a race feel as though we don't have people to live up to, or to say, oh, that person was great. People don't know this. Mansa Musa was the richest man to have ever lived, but you never know that because it's not in the history books. It's not, even to find it on the internet is very rare. It's more of seen as an oral story, if that makes sense. So I feel that would be essential to actually implement into the education system so that people can actually feel empowered and to not just because at the end of the day we're saying, okay, making a bold step now, but at the end of the day it's all about going back into your history and feeling that, yes, my people have done something that our history doesn't start from slavery. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I actually think that if we look at society, before I came here, I had a look and say, well, actually, how many famous British people are there? What does the internet have to say? Google, speak to me, I said, and Google spoke, and there are a whole host of black people living today that have contributed in a very positive way to British society that we should be proud of. We don't have to keep on looking back. Let's look forwards, because I think there's a lot of people there that we can actually look up to, and that certainly inspire me as well. And I think it's important to, Professor Stuart Hall, academic and broadcaster, I think actually there are a lot of people in Great Britain today that we can look on as people that can inspire us and inspire you to actually achieve and do more. Yeah?
The young man at the back. Has you answered the question? I answered the question. Oh, okay. Brandon.
I was just going to say, I feel like something that university could do is sort of educating white counterparts, because there's so much that for example, this event, we're here and we're learning and stuff, and then we'll go out into the world and put it forward, but then you have white counterparts who just will not because they don't want to, but a lot because of culture and how it is, don't understand and find it difficult to understand because just how we put our points across, etc., gets lost in translation. For example, today, it's just sort of things that happen in everyday life. Today, I overheard just people saying how about student loans and how you get more support if you come from a more disadvantaged background and stuff like that. So it's equal system. Just overhearing comments like, "Oh, you should be poorer so you can get more student loan," and it's not understanding the student loan system is put in place so that everyone can be on an equal level. It's not that people with disadvantaged backgrounds are getting more money, so they have more money than you because you're more privileged, etc. So I feel like just having sort of these events for our counterparts to understand where we're coming from and to understand why things put in place for us, why these events are held, why, yeah, just why.
Actually, my biggest disappointment with this evening, if I'm being honest, I love being here and I love being with you guys, and I came because I wanted to, and I came because I wanted to be able to share this evening with you. But I would have really been pleased to see more white students here as well, to be able to share in this discussion that we're having. And, we talked about responsibility. I mean, did any of us invite? You did? Yeah. But wouldn't it be great if they were here to be able to hear the sorts of issues and difficulties, and also the challenges that face you? And I think actually it's called cultural awareness. It's something that we all need to take on board.
You see, I can build on your point, Wayne. I remember when last couple of weeks when we did the Akala event, and I got around, as I do, talking to students, some who attended the event and some who didn't. So I covered a wide demographic of students. And some of the white students expressed something to me that it never occurred to me, in all this planning and coordination, this never occurred to me. I asked them, did you attend the event? They said no. So I said, why? I was curious to understand why, And they said, I didn't think it was for me. So I said, what do you mean? He said, well, it was advertised extensively by the ACS. Kent Union did advertising as well. And I just thought it was something for black students only. And I said, but surely, this is teaching you about the history of black people in Britain. And most of the students said, well, you know what? I thought it was a shared space, a safe space for black students, so I didn't want to intrude. So when I heard that, it made me think, how can we sort of open this up now to encourage all students to participate, and for students to feel like it's something for the community as opposed to for one group, because the same thing that we're trying to mitigate, inadvertently we're almost perpetuating it. So Wayne's point about inviting your white colleague, that is a very important point, because if we're supposed to develop this cultural competence amongst our colleagues, in this diverse environment, our colleagues need to be educated as to our needs and our challenges, as in the same way that we need to be educated as to their challenges. So I think that's I'll just leave that with you a bit, because that really struck me, and I'm still trying to figure out how can I, accommodate this in future planning. But that really, really sits with me.
The young man?
Yeah. I appreciate what you said, but it's always the thing where everyone's always thinking how and why. You need to have the answer, to be honest. You're saying that, the man over there said that you should invite your counterparts. I was invited here today because I finished uni, so I didn't know about it outside of uni. But I was invited here, so I've come here, and if I had more people to invite, I would have. With the Akala thing, I know you said you was happy that 400 people came, but you could have done a lot more. I understand the university did possibly the best they could, but Akala's, to everyone here who knows who Akala is, he's not a small name. He's not a small person. He can definitely bring a crowd, and obviously 400 people is good, but I don't believe it's good enough.
Can I share something with you before you depart? Can I share something with you?
Done.
Our biggest lecture theatre here on campus has a capacity of 471.
Okay, so then it should have been
So
471.
in terms of capacity, there is a significant issue. So when we put on the event, we had to facilitate our students first and foremost, and the tickets went in 24 hours, they're gone, right? So I can appreciate there's a strong demand for Akala services.
The point there says role models, and obviously Akala being one of them, and my man over here had a whole list of names he didn't read out to us, but there's so many people that have done great things for black people in the past and doing great things now. So we need to push these role models and bring them in. Just bringing Akala once, you saw, like you said, obviously you're proud of the 400, but we could have had 471, but we had 400, so it's good. Next time he comes, maybe bring somebody else. if you can't get him, there's so many other people that can come. There's so many other people, even just students that have finished, that have done great things. There's so many people that don't mind speaking.
What I can say to you is that the Student Success Project, we currently have an inspirational speaker series in situ. So if you know, as you said, you're an external. So if you Google University of Kent Student Success Project, you'll see our page and you'll get an idea of our aims and objectives. So we have an inspirational speaker series that is developing a conversation around race and belonging within this university.
When did that start?
This started on the back of last year's Black History Month. So it's something in development, and I can report that the conversation is a vibrant conversation. Stephen can report that, Aaron can attest to that, Omaladi. We are having a very vibrant conversation here at the university around race and belonging. And the plan is to bring in more inspirational speakers, not only men, powerful female inspirational speakers. Anne-Marie Maffedon is one of them. She was here, right? So basically, watch this space.
Well, I did watch the space last year. That's why I made my own society. I made Black Art Studies because I thought there was a gap. And we put on events. And we was that space that you guys now are claiming to be, which is great. But we was that space last year. So when I asked you when did it start, I would have had that conversation. I should have had that conversation. You should know me if you was having that conversation last
Collaboration.
year. Yeah, I
Collaboration. I think that's the key.
Yeah, just to build on Dave's point about obviously the Akala event, it was sold out. However, what had happened is on the day of the event, not everybody turned up. So there was literally spaces. We had over 400 people came. It's none of our faults. Literally, we put out all of the tickets. Even we actually even extended the tickets and put out some standing area. However, people that booked the ticket didn't come, number one. Number two, to touch on your point about obviously now people coming back to the university, we had a debate talk obviously this week in Grimmon Lecture Theatre. However, we didn't reach full capacity as well. We had the likes of Christopher Chempong, who works for IBM, who is his dissertation was put on BBC. We had the likes of Tendai Moyo, who is an alumni from the university, the African Caribbean Society president from 2014 to 2015. The likes of David Smith, who is the African British Alliance chairman for black-owned businesses. So we are doing these things. However, the problem just goes back to communication and the amount of students that actually attend these things, because we do put these events out there and we are trying to make sure that we empower our students at the university. We are trying to make sure that they are more involved in terms of building up a community and society at the University of Kent, even in Canterbury. Because even my brother, just as last year, as you were saying, there was over the whole Zayn Malik situation and the whole Ramsgate White Lives Matter protest. We need to make sure that people are woke, people are aware of what's going on around them, and people are trying to get involved in these things. But I feel like it's just about, at the end of the day, it comes back down to communication and making sure that we actually try and be part of the development we do want to see. The young lady in the back.
I just wanted to say that I feel it's really important that as black people we need to be confident about knowing the problem that we have. And I feel that when we speak about all of these issues, we feel uncomfortable speaking about it to our white counterparts or our Asian counterparts. And I feel that you can't expect someone to understand your situation if they are not the same as you. You can't expect a white person to understand how it feels to be black. And I feel that that's really important to speak to our white counterparts about how it feels. And that doesn't have to be in an intrusive manner. You can speak to someone kindly about, this is the way I grew up, this is how my hair is, this is how I feel being black in lecture theatres. If I'm being honest, you guys are genuinely the first black members of staff in the University of Kent I've ever seen. I was just
How long have you been here?
3 years.
No.
You are genuinely...
What course did you study? What course did you study?
Accounting and finance. You are
Go to the Department of Economics and you'll see a whole
you are
host.
genuinely the first black members of staff I've seen here. And another thing I feel as well is that it's really important in the workplace as well. I've just come back from a year on placement and being the minority. However, I didn't feel any type of way, and I feel that it actually made me closer to my white counterparts, letting them know the differences that I have. And I think that's really important in terms of recruitment as well. Fair enough, we don't have something that's in common with that white person, but by you being authentic and open about yourself, it blurs those lines of differentiation and they feel comfortable around you. When you're employing someone, me as well, if I was employing someone, if a black person works in, instantly I feel a connection between them because we're both black, even though we might be two completely different people. If you have spoken to your white counterpart and they feel comfortable with you, you instantly have a better chance of getting that job. I think it's about being open about this. The fact that, like, I'm being honest, I didn't invite any of my white friends here, and that's bad on my part. And I know a lot of people said they did, and it's a shame that more white people didn't turn up. So what I'm just saying is that I just feel that we need to be more open in that sense, and we need to get involved in all the extracurricular activities. A lot of people said that they didn't feel that the university advertised opportunities. I personally disagree. I don't feel that there was any opportunities that white people were given that I weren't, and I knew that coming into university as a black person I was going to find it hard to find a job, so I made that effort to get involved in extracurricular activities to make myself more recruitable, which I feel I was successful at. I feel that sometimes we need to take responsibility and know you have to go the extra mile. You have to, as a black person, and I think we can't keep blaming the fact that we're being black. We need to take action now. I'm the child of immigrants, and I know that what you were saying, I really agree. I have already exceeded what my parents have, so I know that I need to get to that position so that my children can look at me the same way white children look at their parents. I don't look at my mum and dad and say, I want to get to where they are getting to, because I want to get further than them, and I know that I need to get to that high position. If I want to be CEO, I know that I can be CEO on my credits and on the fact that I'm black. I think that's something that makes me even more special. And those people that I saw, and I want my children to be able to see that as well. And I just think as black people, we don't need to say that, oh, because I'm black. We need to say because I'm black. That makes me better than other people as well.
I shouldn't say this, right, but I would like to adopt you as my daughter.
That's powerful.
The young man at the back there.
I know you mentioned like almost 35% of the student body is black or minority, but that also misses the point that 65% of them are not. And I think a lot of the, especially when you said it's a safe space, and white students or people who are not black or minority feel they can't be included in it. It's a bit strange that safe space almost feels like a code word for that means the rest of you are not included. I think a lot of the times, a lot of the things that happen during Black History Month feel so it's just for Black history, where Black history is everybody's history, and that's something that needs to be really felt, not just with us, but like across the board. I think, yeah, it does start from us, and a lot more black students should have attended. But we also need to realise a lot of white students or a lot of people who are not black need to feel like this is their history just as much as it is our history. Just like we are taught that their history is basically our history. Do you know what I'm trying to say? We need to feel like everybody can be included in it. And a lot of these, and I do apologise because you do have said like a lot of events do take part during the year, but a lot of these ones where it's Black History Month, take part in Black History Month, a lot of people feel because it's Black history, like that's all that there is. Because I will say, and it may not be the university's fault, but on like one or two occasions, we have, not run-ins, but you've heard students say stuff like, oh, cultural appropriation, oh, they're going to start about that again. And it happens within our student experience. It's part of our life. Like, this is where we live now. This campus is basically like our world. This is our experience. And if you can imagine that these are people who are our age mates, who have seen the same social media we've seen, who have seen the same people killed that we've seen, who've had to have experienced the same arguments that we've had experienced, and this is their experience of black people's experience. You can only imagine that if we're the future, they're the future too. And if we're being taught these things, they also need to be taught those things. Because if we want to be the CEOs, they're also going to be CEOs. And if they're the people who are going to be employing, like us, for example, they need to know just as much as we are aware the issues that we deal with. So even this as much is it's a safe space for black students, safe space to not be a code for exclusive. They should feel like they should, it's just as much as their right to be excluded as it is our right to be included, because we affect each other's growth. And if I've experienced that within the 4 months of being in university, it's only going to be compounded every year that something happens that they are not a part of the discussion. So I think it is Black History discussion should happen throughout the whole year. It shouldn't just feel like, oh, October's our year, and after that, like, we go back into our show.
No, that's sorry, apologies. Based upon what you said, just to let you know that at the end of the day, Black History Month is the month where we celebrate our culture, diversity, and we empower each other even more. But we as Kent Union, as the African Caribbean Society, and as even the heads of the university are trying to make sure that it's all year round. The ACS, we do a lot of events. Next month we're looking to do about 4 more events. Right throughout the academic year. It's not basically what I'm trying to say is that it's not only just in Black History Month that you should be empowered. We're trying to make sure that you as BME students, as white students, as Caucasian students, should be cultured on, obviously now, Black history, should be cultured and aware of what's gone on in the past, because at the end of the day, it takes all of us to make that change that we want to see. So,
See what I would say to you, I would invite you, and so I'm extending an invitation to you. As a practitioner, the bad practice would be prescribing something and expecting the patient just to take it. You know, I don't care what's your ailment, just take paracetamol, right? That's bad practice. So I'm inviting you to consult. Come and see us, the Student Success Project. Share your ideas with us, you know. Tell us what your needs are. And we will see if that fits into our overall strategy, if that's something that we can explore, we can develop along with you guys. Because we are big on collaboration. And I think any intervention that we are conducting within our project, we would want to ensure that it's a collaborative effort and it is reflective of the needs of the students. So I'm inviting you to find us.
Can I just say, I don't want to be misconstrued. Me, I'm proud of where I come from, I'm proud of my skin, I'm proud of who I am, and I'm proud of Black History Month. But I think the main point I was trying to make is we need to make it that white students or non-Black students see it as just as much as I need to learn this.
Absolutely.
Just as much as we feel like, oh my gosh, we need to make this, we need to be part of this discussion. They need to, I don't know who needs to...
Are you saying to us that the challenge is that you want to make it a much more inclusive event?
Yeah, because at the end of the day...
So how? This is the how. That's what I'm inviting you to tell us. Give us your ideas.
It does start with us, as in we need to invite like friends that we know that are Black, but it's something that needs to be taken into consideration is as part of university. University can be very cliquey. A lot of what you do find is cultures cling to each other because it is what is familiar. So at the end of the day, even though you might not be able to impact us to force us to diversify ourselves as a community of students, it's also part of the care of administrators to make it aware for everybody to feel a part of it. Because we do get quite caught up in the fact that we're students and we want people who look like us to be our friends and stuff. So I do feel like you are aware of what we all look like more than we're aware of what we look like. So I think it is to impact and reach everybody to make them feel like it is a part of this experience, because I want to be here and I feel it's my need as an individual, as a Black female, to be here, but they should also feel like as a human being and as a person I need to be here, because they need to teach their children just as much we need to teach their children what happens.
And just about as Mr. Thomas said, it's all about collaborations. Societies need to collaborate more, whether it be white societies, whether it be arts, whether it be the business school, whether it be the investment society. We do need to liaise more to actually put on events where we bring different people of different races together to actually interact with each other, understand each other's culture, and actually develop an intelligence or education about where people come from. Because at the end of the day, knowledge is power, and if you limit your knowledge because you say that, oh, well, they're not the same race as me, you're as ignorant as any other person. Okay, the lady with the headscarf.
I totally agree with, sorry, I have a sore throat, but I totally agree with what we're all saying about like collaboration and everything. But recently in London, I saw Reniedo Lodge talking about her book, Why We're Not Talking to White People About Race Anymore. And I don't want that idea of collaboration to then turn into a duty of every Black person to constantly have to educate their white counterparts. For example, I went to a predominantly white school, and it was my role all the time to have to educate my white counterparts on their privileges, their white privileges, their middle class privileges, and that takes a toll on your mental health, and it takes a toll. It's exhausting to have to constantly repeat the same messages, because then I'm sorry, it's just like the same way I can Google something and learn about my history is the same way my white counterparts can do the same things. I don't have to baby my white friends into the movement. it's just as simple as acknowledging your privilege and then working on actually doing something with that knowledge that you now have. It shouldn't be black people, having to baby you through like, hi, this is why racism is bad. It's exhausting.
Any more questions for the evening, Brandon?
I kind of want to take a swing on what's been saying and ask like a different question. I want to ask like, how is like the university or just like uni culture including like biracial and mixed race students into like the community without forcing them to pick a side of their identity? Because that's like a struggle that mixed race people and like personally struggle with, is sort of feeling like I can include myself in sort of events like this, and just is the university doing anything about that?
I think that's a brilliant question, and if I can reflect on Akala's answer to that question, I don't know if anyone remembers what he said about that being mixed race. So he has a white mother and a black father, so he is mixed race also. So being a person of mixed heritage, he chose to adorn the privileges of his white mother, as he said, and other times he was identified as a black person. So for me personally, what that says is that's a personal decision, really, because it's difficult for an institution to say, well, and this event is also appropriate for people of mixed heritage. I don't think that would be the right statement to make, because who will determine what identity you should adorn, right? I think that's a real personal decision. So it's quite complicated in looking at it that way, but I appreciate your point. And it's all about appreciating diversity, really. And that's something that's standard across the board. Because if we're operating in a diverse cultural environment, I think an appreciation from both sides, as the young lady said, maybe it's not your responsibility every day because it becomes attritional. And there must be some motivation from, people of other races to find out about their colleagues, right? And I think that enhances the student experience. So for me personally, and this is my personal story, if someone asked me, where are you from? Many years ago, I used to be confused about that. I spent many years being confused about that. I was born in Jamaica. I've lived in Germany. I've lived in the US, I've lived overseas, and I've lived in the UK for many, many years. So if someone says, where are you from? I'm totally confused. No word of a lie. But the answer, I've finally come up with an answer to that question that I'm very comfortable with. They say, where are you from? And I say, I'm a global citizen. And for me, it's not taking the mick. For me, that's a good answer, because guess what? I can understand your culture. I can understand your culture. I've got Nigerian friends, Ghanaian friends, Kenyan friends, American friends. So I can understand most cultures, most prominent cultures. That's an advantage. So if students come into this environment, as a black person from Nigeria, and they can learn and appreciate the culture of a white person from Ireland, that's an advantage. So you're leaving now with a skill, right? You're now a global citizen because you've got a global context. That must be an advantage for myself. So I don't know if I answered your question. Sort of-ish.
As I touched on your point, we actually had the same kind of question in our debate this week, if and based upon that, what I would say is that nobody, whether you're black, whether you're mixed race, whether you're from Ghana, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, England, nobody can determine what you identify yourself with. You as an individual identify yourself as yourself. Nobody can tell you, well, because you're mixed race, you're white, you're black. You're as much white as you are black, my brother. So all I have to say is not honestly. So what I have to say is that don't let anybody dictate who you are or make you feel any type of way you don't want to be felt to feel. Based on that last point, I'm just going to have to draw this wonderful session to a close.
Sorry, you asked about what the university can do to make it more inclusive.
Yes.
I think you should look into maybe like a world festival. So we have a week of just festivities of different cultures.
March 7th to 13th.
Yeah, we have something. Yeah, we have it. It's called World Fest.
I was stopped as I was walking along by a gentleman. He owns a Jamaican, I don't know, Afro-Caribbean restaurant. And the first thing he asked me is, I've walked around this university and I'm shocked to see the amount of ethnic BEM, minorities and whatnot. Why is there no, you know, like a catering service for them? And I'd be happy to go to my, whatever, caravan next to the others. You could do that.
Just to jump on the point, because I've been trying to get African food store on campus. When I spoke to one of them, and they said they approached the university, but they were denied. That they were saying there were no more stores on campus. But then a few weeks later, another store came up, and they were wondering, why didn't you take us? So I think when we have things like World Fest, we should try and get African or African Caribbean people on campus, because that's what's also missing. Even if it could be just once a day, people would really love it. And there's one in town that I've been trying to get on the university forever. So
I think
it's not smoky, it's nice.
I think the issue may be a little bit more complex than that. Yeah. Often when you actually look at these stories, there's a greater subtext underneath. And I mean, when I started here in 2012, there was a store here that sold Jamaican food, and I very much enjoyed it. Curry goat and whatnot. It was a pleasure for most lunchtimes. But they fell foul of university rules. They were asked to leave. So but what we do in World Fest is, you know, with Kent Union, who have control of the plaza, invite a whole variety of outlets to come on campus, as long as they fulfill the various health and safety loopholes that exist. And I'm looking forward to what's going to appear on campus in March of next year, where we celebrate multiculturalism. What's the date? 14th?
Last year was 7th to 13th, so it could be the 8th to the 14th.
Yeah, it'll be in March again this year.
It's the first week in March, generally.
But often when outlets are not accepted on campus, you'll find that there may be a health and safety issue. I'm not saying there is, but I'm saying that that's often the case when I inquire with my colleagues in commercial services.
So, based on that, we are going to have to round up as we have gone so over time. Firstly, I just want to thank everybody for taking their time out to come tonight. And if we could give a lovely round of applause for